Have you ever wondered what the red lever on your airplane really does? Today, let's talk about mixture. Greetings, my clever minds, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, you will learn the essentials for you as a pilot to operate your engine the proper way regarding mixture. I will leave most of the mechanical stuff aside. If you want to learn anything else, please ask me in the comments. It will be a pleasure to answer you. First things first, what is this? This is the mixture control lever. You can find one on most piston engine aircraft, or one per engine, to be more exact. You can find red levers on some turboprop aircraft, like your Cessna Caravans and older TBMs. But those are different. Those are called condition levers, and they only apply to turbine-driven engines. Back to mixture levers. They control the fuel to air ratio, or the fuel mixture, as the name says. All the way back, you have fuel cutoff, or zero fuel for a given amount of air. So you have a ratio of 0. I have the honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant here to make it easier to show you what I'm doing during flight. I have it configured to mimic what I have here on the Cessna 152. So I have carburetor heat, throttle, mixture, and flap lever. Oh, and the trim wheel as well. Now you want to start the engine. You need fuel, so let's introduce some. Usually you want to start most aircraft with the mixture full forward or full reach. But there are some situations where you might need to do it otherwise, like in higher altitudes or higher air temperature. And we will talk about that in just a moment. Also, we need some throttle. That is what actually controls the fuel flow, not the mixture. Usually for piston engine aircraft, the idle setting is not at 0 throttle, but slightly above that. So I give it just a touch. Let's turn the key to start. And perfect. For the 152, we should set our throttle for idle at 1000 RPM. Also for Cessnas, due to something related to spark plugs that I don't even comprehend, you should reduce slightly the mixture after start until you need it for takeoff. Even for other aircraft that don't have the same characteristics, it doesn't hurt to reduce it just a bit anyway. Now the chemistry lesson. To occur combustion inside the engine, typically, you have to supply fuel and oxygen. Well, oxygen is abundant in the air and it's free, so take as much as you want. The thing is, you only need a certain amount of oxygen to burn a given amount of fuel. The excess exits through the exhaust unreacted. That proportion of fuel to oxygen is called stoichiometric ratio. You don't have to remember that name. You just need to remember that in combustion, there is a ratio of fuel to oxygen where both are burned completely and there is nothing left over. That's important for the next topic, mixture leaning. The terms rich and lean refer to the amount of fuel in the mixture, like nutrients on food products. Remember those from now on. So, why do you want to lean your mixture? Well, remember that stoichiometric thing? Usually you want to fly close to that range because it makes your fuel burn more efficient and gives you a more complete combustion. For simplicity, let's call that a ratio of 1. The thing is, airplanes can fly at different altitudes, and the air gets less dense the higher you go. So, with air less dense, you also get less oxygen. The percentage of oxygen in the air at the altitudes we fly doesn't change that dramatically. There is just less of it by volume. Can you see where this is going? If you have less oxygen entering your engine, you need less fuel to keep your ratio where you want it. So there you go. The higher you get, the less fuel you need per unit of time to keep your combustion balanced. But now, how do we find that ratio? Mixture levels don't come graded. Well, you know the most useful thing that combustion produces is energy in the form of heat. Lots of heat. And it gets hotter the closer you are to the ratio. So, someone decided to put a clever sensor that's displayed on this gauge that measures exhaust gas temperature, or EGT. This gauge, and most gauges for that matter, don't show actual values, but you don't need that. You just need to know where the temperature gets the hottest, or the EGT peak, to know that you reached your stoichiometric ratio. There are ways to lean your mixture without an EGT instrument, but realistically, if you want to have control of your engine, you should have one on your aircraft. So, now with all that information, let's taxi to the runway and I'll explain everything as we go. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we are in Pico today, just to change things a bit. I have said that we need less fuel the higher we are, and of course if you are on a higher elevation airport you need less fuel in your mixture for takeoff, for optimum performance. We are basically at sea level here, so I should take off with full mixture, but I'll kinda show you how you manage your mixture for takeoff on higher elevations. Usually you would take care of that as you do your engine run-up. I never do those because we are in a simulator and I know that my engine will perform well, but things would go somewhat like this. You increase your throttle, let's see if 1700 works for this one. I am not a 152 pilot, so there are things that I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, 1700 doesn't give me a reading on the EGT, so I'll give it just a little bit of throttle. And now we reduce slowly the mixture and we will see the EGT rising. As you lean your mixture, the EGT will stop to rise and will start to drop. And you want to find that specific spot where you get your maximum or the peak of the EGT. That's kind of tricky because you have to be slow to give it time to stabilize, and even then just a small movement can make you pass the peak and come right back down and you don't even notice. These needle vibrations are well less pronounced in the air. Did you see the needle coming back down? That means I already passed the peak. I can now enrich my mixture, so opposite motion to where that peak was. And this other needle that you can move, it's for your reference, so you can mark where the peak was. Now, for best takeoff performance, you want to have your mixture rich of peak, or with more fuel than the peak. Values can vary, but it should be around 50 to 75 degrees rich of peak. And you can see the degrees by the divisions on the gauge. Each small division is 25 degrees, as it says on the label. I'll do 50, so 2 lines to the left. I'm not sure if you can see on the Bravo throttle quadrant, but we are basically at full mixture again, because as I said, we are almost at sea level, and at sea level you should take off with full mixture. But now you got the idea. Let's take off and climb so I can show you the rest of the process. As a rule of thumb, most pilots would say that you don't need to bother with mixture below 3000 feet. But for the 152, since it's kind of limited on the power department, I always take a little bit of mixture as I climb, because it gives me some more performance out of the engine. And as a guidance, you can use that little star on the EGT gauge that kind of marks where the peak would be on lower altitudes and on climbing power. Mixture leaning is not an exact science, but there are two main ways of looking at it. Either you want to take the best performance or the best fuel economy. For the great majority of piston engine aircraft, it goes like this. If you want the best performance or the best speed per unit of fuel burned, you fly reach of peak. If you want the best economy of fuel, you fly lean of peak. First, I'll talk about reach of peak, which is probably the most common of the two and the one that I use the most as well. As we did for takeoff, the safest bet for the 152 is around 50 degrees reach of peak, but if an actual 152 pilot could confirm that in the comments, that would be great. So what I basically do is try to find the peak on the EGT and then introduce more fuel until we reach the 50 degrees that I want. And you will see the full procedure when we get to our cruise altitude of 10,000 feet. Now that we are above 3000 feet, I will explain how we will lean our mixture as we climb. Since we are climbing, I want the best performance, so I'll keep the mixture reach of peak. But if you want to keep your EGT on the perfect level as you climb, you'll have to constantly adjust your mixture, and that doesn't make sense. Because after you find your peak and by the time you are in reaching your mixture, the peak has already changed. What I do is periodically I'll try to find the peak, and when I find the peak I leave the mixture there, because in a few moments the peak is already below that and we are basically reach of peak. If you do that like every 5 minutes or every 2000 to 3000 feet, it's perfectly fine, you don't have to worry about it. And as I said, as you climb, the star on the EGT gauge is always a good reference for you to keep your temperature. We have just reached 10,000 feet, that's our cruising altitude for today. And the first thing I will do is reduce our throttle to something reasonable for cruise. And you want to do that before you take care of your mixture. And you can give it some time for the temperature to stabilize. Let's start the process now. As I said, we are doing it reach of peak first, and I'm lining the needles so I have a good place to start. I should be close to the actual value because I've been leaning as we climbed, but let's see. We bring it back a bit and let it rest so it stabilizes. I can readjust the needle so it lines up with the other one. And I think we just found the peak. And there, you can barely see it, but it's coming down. So, as I just marked the peak with the yellow needle, I can go past the peak to the reach side again. I don't have to worry about reaching peak because we already did. And we go to 50 degrees reach of peak. Introducing the mixture slowly. As you get used to the process, you will do it way faster. But you have to let it stabilize as well when you go reach of peak. so it doesn't fluctuate too far from the 50 degrees that you want. See, there we go. We are flying with a mixture set for best performance, reach of peak cruise. So now I'll show you how to do it lean of peak, with less fuel than the peak. We have to find peak first. We already have the needle on the right spot, so it should be easy. This time you keep bringing the mixture down after passing the peak. We'll do around 25 degrees, but you should probably do somewhere around 10 to 15. 25 is probably too much for most aircraft. This should be around minus 25 degrees. It looks alright. In this aircraft you have no way to see the fuel flow, but on other aircraft you would see a decrease while you do this. One thing that you get while flying lean of peak is that some engines struggle to keep that low fuel on the mixture, especially on engines that are not well kept. But I'll try to see what this 152 does on the simulator. Yeah, I'm bringing the mixture well past the 25 degrees lean of peak, and the engine is not struggling, so I guess that part is not that well simulated. But that's fine. You get the point. So now we will descend to land in Fayal, and usually for descent we don't need to bother with mixture unless we actually need it for performance reasons. So if you need to level out or start climbing again, what I will do is basically the same I did for climbing out of Pico, is trying to find the peak and leave it there. It's perfectly fine like that. But anyway, if you get like the muscle memory to know where to put your mixture at a given altitude, you can progressively increase your mixture as you descend. That doesn't hurt anyone as well. Now for landing, it's mixture full reach and the rest of the landing configuration that you need. Oh, I think someone is entering the runway. That wasn't expected. I thought I have all the traffic disabled. So now what do we do? Should I go around, or should I ignore it and go through it, since I have all collisions disabled? Well, I guess if you are still watching you wouldn't mind to see a go around, so let's do it. Go around, full throttle, flaps 20, and there we go. We are completely visual, weather is no factor, so I guess I'll do a midfield right turn and come back around. I'm trying to see what kind of aircraft is that. By the looks of it, I think it's an A320, but I'm not sure if that's sim injected or another player maybe. I was pretty sure I disabled all the traffic settings. Let's see if he's fast enough and leave us space to do half a circuit. Oh, and by the way, sir, you are taking off on the wrong runway. Judging by the behavior, I would say that's a player. Oh, and come on, sir, why are you taking so long? And if that's an A320, why are you lined up so far forward in the runway? Did you know that the runway is kinda short? Oh, he's rolling. Let's race against him. I just want to observe how this will turn out. Oh, he's already in the air. Kinda light, I might say. I guess he will climb above us in no time, so that gives us enough room to do our circuit. Usually we use that rock as a reference for our turn to base. And that's called Morro de Castelo Branco. I turned slightly early, that will make my final kinda short, but that's okay. That's fine. The Cessna 152 can do everything. I slightly overshot. Active Sky says the wind is 100 at 10 knots, straight down the runway, but it feels like it's coming slightly from the right. That's why I overshot. Of course, I have to excuse myself. The nose dropped slightly there. I guess, judging by my landings, you would probably think that I'm a Boeing pilot, am I right? Who do you think I am, a psychopath? I want to keep my spine and my life for a long time. Probably the life part is considered offensive by the Boeing pilot community. I'm sorry, guys. Horta Airport looks lovely, as always. Much better than the place we took off earlier. That's probably offensive as well. There are 3 of them waiting for me today. How kind. Let's try to squeeze between them and spare their lives just because of that. We are back to our spot. Parking brake on. Shut down. And that's it, guys. I hope you learned something. The first part of the video was for those who want to learn how to fly. This final part was for those who want to enjoy life with me. I hope you liked this new tutorial format, and I'll try to teach you some things from now on, at least the ones that I know. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel to help us grow this community. And as always, fly clever!